Welcome back. Now we're deep in the heart of Avideya, which Avideya literally means to execute sambandha, to execute the relationship. Knowledge of the relationship, execute the relationship, and then taste the fruit of the relationship. So lesson 6 is Varnashram Challenge. At the close of the last lesson, we heard Srila Prabhupada say, near the end of his life, that his one lamentation was that he had not had time to establish Varnashram, the Vedic organization of society into 4 natural occupational groups and 4 stages of life. Quote, man's stepping stone for spiritual understanding. Gita 231 purport. In this lesson we'll look at Srila Prabhupada's vision for Varnashram, which is still the great frontier for establishing Krishna consciousness throughout the world. There's Prabhupada chanting japa at Bhaktivedanta Manor on the South Lawn, summer 1973. The photographer for nearly all these shots is my godbrother Bhargava Prabhu, who captured Prabhupada in so many different moods that summer. A lot of classic shots. In this lesson we'll look at how Srila Prabhupada used the term Varnashram in 4 different ways, as well as how Srila Prabhupada applied Varnashram to ISKCON differently over 3 time periods. And for the 4 different ways, I took inspiration from my Varnashram colleague, Hare Krishna Dasi. Do you remember? Anybody remember her? She used to write these pieces in BTG. I was writing the Simple Living column in the 80s, and then when I moved to South India for a couple of years, she took it over. She took it to another level. She's a brilliant researcher, writer, historian. She's like a farm historian. And she took it over during the 90s. Okay, and in July-August 2000 issue of BTG, if you have the database, she wrote a piece called What Do We Mean by Varnashram? So the first part of the lesson is based on that research. Okay, there's Prabhupada in Radha, actually, giving the Nectar of Ocean series lectures. Here's the 4 ways Prabhupada used the term. Okay, Langa Prabhu.
Number 1, Vedic Varnashram.
Right, the days of yore, the good old days. Right? Before Kali Yuga.
2, Dormant Varnashram.
Dormant, potential, sleeping. It just needs activating.
3, Materialistic Varnashram.
Right, people like Ravana, Jarasandha, they do a lot of Varnashram stuff, but they misuse it. It was materialistic.
And 4, Daiva Varnashram for Kali Yuga.
Yeah, this is the Varnashram that Prabhupada was interested in. So now we're going to take a look at each one. Let's see here. Yes. So there's a very early Bhagavad Gita painting. Do you recognize that? In the Gillen 1972 edition, there's this painting depicted the 4 Varnas. Early Gita as it is painting showing the classic Vedic Varnas, or divisions of work. And now we're going to scroll a verse Prabhupada would quote a lot in reference to Vedic Varnashram. Okay. So, Manaji? Can you read that? Sanskrit?
Varnashrama Charavata Purushena Parapumam Vishnu Aradyate Pata Nandyattatosha Kararanam.
And it means?
One can worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, by proper discharge of the principles of Varna and Ashram. There is no alternative to satisfying the Lord than by execution of the principles of the Varnashrama system.
And that's
Vishnu Purana.
right, Vishnu Purana. This Vishnu Purana verse is from a time when Vedic culture was worldwide. People followed the duties or dharmas and purifying practices, samskars, for their occupation, varna, and spiritual status, ashram. And when their qualities of work, guna, qualities and work, guna and karma, generally did reflect their birth, janma. So there were purebred, thoroughbred lines of Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras. There was no need for a Varnashram college because it was just passed down from generation to generation. As Srila Prabhupada points out in the following morning walk excerpt, classic Vedic culture has long since passed away. So, yeah. And here's, I'm just going to read, this is from the morning walk, April 74 in Bombay. That is Vedic civilization, samskar, before the birth, and immediately after the birth, then one after another. This is called jata karma, then nama karma, then when he is grown boy, upanayana samskar, diksha samskar, then when he is grown up, and marriage. Marriage is also another samskar. In this way, there are dasha vidha samskar, 10 kinds of purifying practices. So unless one goes through all the samskars, he is not accepted as higher caste. Then where is Garbhadan samskar going on today? Nobody takes care of Garbhadan samskar to purify the womb. Still they are declaring that I am Brahmin. Therefore the conclusion is, Kalo Shudra Sambhavaha. Everyone is Shudra or low-born. Prabhupada's using the word Shudra in a derogatory sense there. But as we pointed out previously, Shudra, it really means employee. That's the kind of the neutral sense of Shudra, working for someone else, which is perfectly respectable, and as a matter of fact, it's required. So that was the morning walk, Bombay 74. Although classic Vedic Varnashram has long since passed away, since it comes from Krishna, its dormant realities remain, simply awaiting activation. So now here's the dormant Varnashram that Prabhupada is going to speak of here. And we all remember 1971 June, Prabhupada in like a needle in Moscow. He got an invitation from Professor Grigory Kotovsky at the Institute of Oriental Studies in Moscow, and he took that invitation and he had Shyam Sundar go down to the embassy in Delhi, the Russian embassy, and to show them that this is proof positive, I have an invitation, you should give me a visa. And they did. Because again, India and Russia have a long-standing relationship. But Prabhupada very boldly took with him, to assist him, 2 Americans at the height of the Cold War, right? And Malati, who was married to Shyam Sundar, says, and before they left, I snuck a Bhagavad Gita into Shyam Sundar's suitcase. And that almost backfired when they got to the airport. You know, there was security, and there's 2 people with American passports, and then they really went through his stuff, and they saw the Gita. And they were, the immediate people, security, they were suspicious of that. But then some supervisor saw it and looked at Prabhupada and said, it's okay, you know, it's Indian culture or something. So, when I presented this seminar in Moscow in 2014, I insisted to the devotees, you have to take me to Red Square. What is this? In front of St. Basil's Cathedral. And if it were color, you could see it's red. You know, it's very beautiful, actually. And they shot me there. I mean, they didn't kill me, but they took a picture. There's one place where you have, it's like we have in Arlington National, the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, with Eternal Flame. They have something like that too. And they have 2 guards standing on either side of this shrine for all the Russians who have died, you know, in defending the country. And these guards, They're not allowed, all they can do is blink. They can't move. They're not allowed to move during the shift. It's uncanny. And then there's another guard near them. And if anybody makes a false move, toward the shrine to deface it or whatever, this person is empowered to shoot. It's like he's there with a gun. It's so heavy. So anyway, so Prabhupada was there in 71, height of the Cold War, Brezhnev, he's in there, in power. And he's staying at the National Hotel. I saw it. It's still dumpy. It's a dumpy place. And the story that they could hardly get anything to eat, hardly get rice. All they had was meat and milk. That was the main stuff. So Shamsundar had to go all over Moscow to try to find a little rice and a little vegetable. Okay, so Prabhupada was there 5 or 6 days, and he did meet with Katovsky. Now, when Katovsky was corresponding with him, he was saying, "Oh yes, Swamiji, you must come, and we can have a nice program, and it'll be very nice, so please come." So then Prabhupada, he comes, and he knocks on Katovsky's door. Now it's one thing to have polite correspondence, but then when the Swami actually shows up live and in person at the door, then Katovsky quickly ushered him in the room and said, "Oh, come in, Swamiji." Because Swamiji was an oddity, and everywhere he went, there were people watching him. So Katovsky said, "Come on in, it's safe in here." We're not bugged in here by the KGB. So Prabhupada came in, and he had some talks, and they were recorded surreptitiously by Shamsundar. Oh, and the reason we have pictures, as you've seen the pictures, is because he also brought a camera, a Brownie Star Flash camera, remember? Brownie Star Flash. And he had a few shots on the wall, 6 or 7 shots, and they all came out really well by Chris's arrangement. Okay, so when Prabhupada, later on, when he talked about this talk, he would talk about 2 things. He would talk about Marxism and Leninism, and so Katovsky and Krishna consciousness. So Katovsky, he was a real ideologue. He wouldn't admit anything. Prabhupada was pointing out to him that, you want to make a classless society, but materially it's absurd. You're the professor in this institute. You're a professor. Somebody else is cleaning the place. Somebody else is administrating. Somebody else is in the Russian Duma, and somebody else is working on the collective farms. Where's the equality, the classlessness? It's natural. And we're going to hear Prabhupada say this. Okay. Yeah. Right now. You ready with the book? Jesse disappeared. Let's hope the sound works.
Bhagavad Gita, there is also the statement, Chatur Varnam Maya Krishna. The sunshine is here in America, in Russia, in India, everywhere. Similarly, the Varnashram system is prevalent everywhere, in some form or other. Just like the Brahmins. The Brahmins means the most intelligent class of brain of the society. Then the Kshatriyas, the administrative class. Then the Vaishyas, the productive class. And the Shudras, the worker class. These 4 classes of men are everywhere present in different names. Because it is creation by the original creator. So it is prevalent everywhere, but not so much.
By identifying different classes of people Krishna has created to form a complete society, Srila Prabhupada indirectly indicates the folly of the communist attempt to make a materially classless society. Yet even Krishna's complete Varnashram system, if not used for his purpose, can become materialistic and corrupt, which is the next one. So I think I mentioned that the only thing that Katovsky would admit was, because Prabhupada was trying to get him to admit points, and he wouldn't admit anything because he was just stubborn. Prabhupada would say, dog stubborn. So finally Prabhupada said, so you follow Lenin, we follow Krishna. We both follow authority. Do you admit? Yes. Yeah. That was the only thing he would admit. And Prabhupada would also say when he traveled that even big professors, they frankly tell me, Swamiji, after this body, everything is finished. Because Marxist-Leninism is completely materialistic. There's no admission of the soul or any kind of thing transcendent. So when I was walking around Red Square with my guide, my devotee guide, because there were still churches in Russia during the Soviet era, so I said, how did that happen? Because it was completely antithetical to Marxist-Leninism, materialism. So how do they let churches go on? And this devotee smiled. He said, the KGB infiltrated the churches. Sometimes they were the priests. So whatever they were preaching in the church, they made sure it didn't compete somehow with Soviet communism. Although they're totally opposite. Okay, so that's dormant. It's there. It's just not recognized, right? So we're not interested in dormant varnashram. We want to activate it. Now, before we go to Prabhupada's varnashram, the one he's interested in, we'll look at materialistic varnashram. As I said here, yet even Krishna's complete varnashram system, if not used for his purpose, can become materialistic and corrupt. What's this? I call it a Google Brahmin because I found him on Google Images. Some kind of buffoon, out of control guy. Okay. So let's see here. Who's going to read? Gokul, you want to read this?
The corrupt caste system of present India is never sanctioned by the scriptures, but the natural caste system is made by God according to quality and work of the subject, and it was never designed for the benefit of accidental birthright.
Yeah, so that was also in a letter to Dr. Patel. When I was presenting down in Kerala, I asked Bhaktivedanta Swami, because Kerala is communist to this day. I said, how did a state in India ever turn communist like Bengal too? And he said, because of the caste Brahmins. They were so exploitive, they were so exclusive, they were so corrupt that the people became ripe for communist propaganda. Workers of the world unite, throw off your chains, the oppressors. Well, the Brahmins were the oppressors. And so, that's how communism took root there. Let's see here. So, that's not by birth, it's by quality and work. Krishna clearly says that. And he says it in Narada Muni says it in Bhagavatam. Although interestingly, in Vedic society, it was so full of samskars that people, if they were born in the families of Brahmins or Kshatriyas or what have you, they had a real good chance of actually manifesting those qualities because of the training and the culture. But today it's not like that. Okay, so another kind of materialistic varnashram is when it's just ritualistic. So we're going to hear Prabhupada talk about it right now.
Out of many thousands and millions of people, one takes to the scientific institute of Varnashram. That means followers of the Vedas, strictly. Out of these persons who are following the Vedic principles, mostly they are attached to karma-kanda, ritualistic ceremonies.
No, and of course we're not interested in that. As we said every morning, it's an offense against the holy name to consider bhakti or the chanting of Hare Krishna to be for fruitive gain. It's not like that at all. So Prabhupada's varnashram application is neither classic Vedic, nor dormant, nor materialistic, but daiva, divinely applied varnashram for our Kali age. Let's take a look. On the right, top right, there's Gita Nagari. I took a picture from one of the articles I wrote. It was called A Splinter's Tale. It was February '84. It's all about pulling wood out of the forests in the winter. You know, you try to cut the wood in the summer, right? And cure it. But sometimes it would be so cold in Gitanagari, we'd run short and we'd have to go out and get it in the snow. So there's a devotee, Vaishnava Das, that Penn State graduate Aggie department guy I told you about. And he's with Bharat and Burfi.
So it's a recent picture.
No, this is 1984.
I thought you said the guy from Penn State was in it.
Yeah, but he's not there anymore.
Oh, it's a different guy than the new guy that's there doing
Oh yeah, that's
okay.
a different incarnation of Gitanagari.
Okay.
As you know, Gitanagari has reinvented itself as an ahimsa dairy. So there's the ox power, as Prabhupada likes to say, bulls are the basis. And there's cow protection. You all remember the purport.
Cows are the utility?
Huh?
Cows are the utility?
Cows of the
Utility?
utility, yeah, cows. Yeah, cows of the utility. So that purport where Prabhupada says, maybe you just read it because I see you're reading. Am I on the air here? Oh no. There we go. So in Kali Yuga, Prabhupada writes in that purport, so the Shudra milkman separates the calf from the cow for purposes we may not mention in these pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. So cow protection, ox power, and then the other part of the Daiva is...
I don't know what that is.
Anybody know where this is?
Bhaktivedanta College.
There you go, you can read it. Yeah, it was so much fun presenting there in Radhadesh, Belgium. Yeah.
That's a cancer.
Because they have a lot of, it's not really a Varnashram college, but they have a lot of components. They've got the beginnings of something. They do have cow protection, they do have Brahminical culture. And I'd seen this shot before and I wondered how they got this shot. You know, did they do an airplane like you did for the picture that's in my room there? And so, in back of, anybody been to Radhadesh? Yeah, so you know, right near the ashram there's hills and there's roads going up the hills. So I said, I bet they... So I walked up the hill on a japa walk after lunch, and I kept turning around to see, and it wasn't quite... And then finally I reached the point where it was just this elevation, and that's how they got the shot. So, Brahminical culture and cow protection here, where are we? Okay. Those are the two tracks. That's what Varnashram is really, it revolves around the cows and the deities, really. It's a whole cycle, just like in Bhagavad Gita 9:26, Patram Pushpam, everybody knows. If you offer me with love and devotion a leaf, flower, fruit, water, I will accept it. So in his purport in his commentary to that verse, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, this means, because bhakti is in that verse twice. Patram pushpam palam toyam yome bhaktya prayachati tadaham bhaktyuparita. Love and devotion, Prabhupada translates it. So Vishwanath says, this means you have to plant the seed with devotion, you have to cultivate the plant with devotion, you have to harvest the plant with devotion. Then you cook it with devotion, you offer it with devotion, you serve it with devotion, you honor it with devotion. This is Patram Pushpam Palam Toy. It's a whole cycle, you know, from the earth to the deities, and then, you know, back to the earth with the cows dropping their dung, fertilizing the land, you know, the whole cycle. So, I'm going to read a couple of sentences from Prabhupada in the Daiva Varnashram mood. And they're rather challenging. Maybe less challenging out here because you're living on the land here. But it's, you know, like I'm in Tucson, Arizona. So, theoretically, we're all yay, rah, rah, cow protection, ox power. But in the city, it really is theoretical because everything is concrete practically to the city, except that our little oasis, ISKCON Tucson Govinda's Lungan is kindly offering to do a permaculture design. So we're going to see if we can beautify the place a little more. It is a nice oasis. We have palms, and we have flowers and little falls and fountains, and we have fish, a koi pond, fish pond, and we have, exotic birds. So if we could make better use of the land, perhaps it could even be a better oasis. Okay, so here's a couple of quotes from Srila Prabhupada. Quote, "So the example is set by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that human civilization will advance only on the basis of Brahminical culture and cow protection." Now, what do we think advancement means in the modern day? Better
Technology.
Microchips or
5G.
what is it?
5G.
5G.
More capital.
More exploitation. Yeah, more sucking the earth for oil and So anyway, but so Prabhupada's saying, on the basis of Brahminical human civilization can advance. It's only going to advance on the basis of Brahminical culture and cow protection. As soon as there is fall down from Brahminical culture, and as soon as there is discrepancy in the protection of cows, there will be no more peace in the world. So another piece I wrote for BTG was, you can talk of peace till the cows come home. And to make it effective, I knew what I had to do. And it was the best and the worst thing I ever did in my life. My wife and I went to the largest slaughterhouse east of the Mississippi. We took the tour. They have a tour department. I mean, they're so brazen, right? So the lady said, would you like to take the tour with or without the kill? You can skip the kill, so I knew I had to see it, smell it, hear it. So I did. And I won't tell you I'll spare you the gory details. It's a whole assembly line. At the end of the assembly line, there's a cafeteria. You can eat what you saw. It's insane, right? So, but the best thing, it was so good because I could see and hear and smell and feel why human society is always being slaughtered in wars. There was a very clear connection between slaughter and war. As George Bernard Shaw wrote, thus cruelty begets its offspring, war. Because these innocent creatures were being wholesalely butchered over 100 cows an hour. And the guy that was doing it, I won't tell you how he did it, but he could have just as easily killed us. There was no soul left in him, practically. It was, and the vibration of the place, just like if you ever read about Nazi concentration camps or Soviet slave labor camps, the Gulag, it was the same vibration. Absolute, total murder. So this is why humanity suffers so much, because we're doing this. This is a big reason we're doing this. And as long as we do that, there will be no more peace in the world. Therefore he, Krishna, specifically said, go, Brahmana hitaya cha. No, the cow is first, because the cow is dependent, is an innocent, helpless creature. It needs supervision by humans. We were going down, leading the New York Rath Yatra in 1988, our Gitanagari ox cart, pulled by Broughton Berthy. And it was glorious. We were leading the charge, the oxen. And there were kids in the ox cart, cheering and riding. And then as we approached Lord and Taylor, there was a demonstration outside Lord and Taylor because they were selling minks, and the Pita people, were protesting, of course, the misuse of the animal for people's fur coats. So they must have seen us coming, because on cue they pivoted like 45 degrees, because we were leading the parade with the oxen, right? And they went like this, shame, shame, shame. Because we were using the oxen. You know, the sentimental idea is that they should just be allowed to run free and they should... But there are certain animals by Krishna's arrangement that need human supervision. So there's such a thing as domestic animals, and if you use them right, they give you a lot of benefit. Okay. So this Krishna consciousness movement is for the protection of Brahminical culture and cows. So as soon as we think we're this body, as soon as we just exploit everything, then everything goes to hell. But you just say that, you just read that boldly if you're a materialist, and it's like, huh? Brahminical culture and cow protection, what's that all about? But they work in tandem to help elevate human society. To glimpse how disconnected most of us are from the, quote, plain living and high thinking of the above reference, ask yourself. So, you folks again are a little closer to Krishna's system, so it doesn't sound strange, but ask yourself, why does human progress depend on Brahminical culture and cow protection? Why is there no Brahminical culture without cow protection? Yeah. Why protect cows and bulls long after they're productive? In our modern materialistic age, how can we practically reconnect with Brahminical culture and cow protection to show ourselves and the world the value of Krishna's culture? We got a problem here. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is a cowherd boy, and we think that kind of life is backwards. It's like I was teaching at the Mayapur Institute, must have been 2011. It was a little mild that day, even though it was winter. So we took the class outside, and we set up tables. Oh, and I had Jaya Swami, the guest speaker. So he was speaking, and there was exchange back and forth. And then, but there was a devotee on a tractor coming around. What was he doing? Anyway, he was doing something on the tractor. And every time he came close to us, we couldn't hear the class. So after a couple of passes, Jaya Swami said, okay, time out. Chan Japa, I'll be right back. So he goes over the fence, and with this devotee, Gaur Hari, a local Bengali, he was the head of the Goshaw actually, got near him. Jaya Swami waved him down, and he said, come here. So the devotee turned off the tractor, walked over to the Maharaj, and so Maharaj said, you have so many brahmacharis in this place, and so many bulls, why are you using the tractor? So Gauri just smiled. He said, Prabhu, they don't want to do this kind of work. They think it's low class. They had local Muslim people, protecting the cows, and that became a scandal because the cows started getting abused because there was no real love, no real feeling for the cows. Because the local devotees didn't want to do that. Even the local village Indians who had joined in Mayapur, they had joined, one reason is to get away from the village life, right in Srila Mayapur. So we have a lot of retraining to do, not just with Westerners, but even the Indians. Used to be, and that's just 50 years ago, it used to be like 75-80% village. It keeps dropping because of the propaganda to make money and go to the city, not just in the West, but in India too. And then they end up committing suicide, the local farmers. Then I was referring to local farmers actually, who hang on, with their chemical inputs and their machinery, and then they can't pay the loans back, and then they just kill themselves. This happens in the West and in the East. Okay, so we will now look at some prominent features of Prabhupada's Varnashram vision to reconnect us with Krishna's culture in the age of Kali. Prabhupada, I'm not sure where he is. Anybody know? I always try to find out. He's somewhere, I'm guessing Europe, but it looks like a nice rural setting, and Prabhupada's going to regard some components, some bullet points of Prabhupada's Varnashram vision. So John, can I read?
Features of Srila Prabhupada's Varnashram vision. development of an ashram colleges worldwide to retrain all Vanas and ashrams in their social and spiritual duties.
Yeah, we need that, as you'll hear Prabhupada say a little later in the lesson, because we don't have culture. We don't have varnashram culture. So we need to find out what it is and how to do it. And
A return to Lord Krishna's land and cow local economy and culture.
this is the Gandhi that Prabhupada liked. Gandhi, the Swadeshi, the spinner of the cloth. The produce only what you need, use only what you produce. Gandhi, the Gita commentator, Prabhupada had no use for. But Gandhi, the Swadeshi, live locally, Prabhupada liked.
A mutual respect and deep appreciation among all classes of people based on their material interdependence and spiritual equality as God's servants.
Yeah, so just like all the parts of the body we take care of, not just the head. So in Varnashram, everybody has a role to play, and everybody needs everybody, and they're not competing like today. It's like in France today, you have the yellow jackets, or whatever they're called, the yellow vests. Yeah, they're sick and tired of being exploited by the city slickers, embodied today by Emmanuel Macron, and they want him out, and they want a better life. So that's how it is in Kali Yuga. Everybody is competing, exploiting. And
Introduction and application of Talavana principles globally according to the time, country, and candidate.
And this last one is very important, because the way you introduce Krishna consciousness in general, and Daiva Varnashram in particular, really varies according to where you are in the world. Okay, so that's components of Prabhupada's Varnashram vision. So the first half we just looked at 4 ways Prabhupada used the term, and he really only had use for Daiva Varnashram. So now we're going to transition. Prabhupada applied Varnashram to ISKCON differently over time. We're going to look at 3 phases of time in Prabhupada's time with us, from 65 to 77, well, especially 66, 67, where he talked about Varnashram to us very, very differently. Okay. So, look at this. For most of Prabhupada's time with us, the majority, Prabhupada was saying, forget it. Forget Varnashram. Chanting Hare Krishna is the panacea. Let's hear Prabhupada say that in 1968. He was in Los Angeles. Yeah, he was answering a question from Madhavis, the late Madhavis Prabhu. And here's how it sounds.
Therefore, this is the panacea to engage everyone in Krishna consciousness, chanting Hare Krishna. This is the only remedy. Now you cannot again introduce the system of Varnashram.
Yeah, chant Hare Krishna, distribute books, have festivals, forget about Varnashram, that's like once upon a time, thousands of years ago. Because Prabhupada's initial focus was, as he would say, we have to put a head back in society. So people, devotees, we were all encouraged to be Brahminical, right? And study the books, and worship the deity. The whole morning program is really around the deity. We get up, we get clean for the deity, we sing to the deity, we chant the deity's names, we have class in front of the deities, about the deity. It's a very Brahminical life that Prabhupada gave us. So that worked for some time, and of course the morning program is, that's in stone for devotees. But or like at Gita, when I was living at Gita Nagari, when it was hot in the summer, it was very cold in the winter and very warm in the summer in Juniata Valley. So Vaishnav Das, that devotee you saw, he knew that he had to get out there with the oxen in July and August, like around 6 a.m. Because the sun's rising, just like here. It's really hot here in the summer, right? And he had to plow with the oxen before the sun rose too high. By late morning they were finished, and then he had to do his rounds. So that's an austerity, just like the pujaris who are addressing the deities. They have to make an appointment with their beads later, because they're doing seva at that japa time. So yeah, Prabhupada's priority is to put a head back in society. Only when the head is sound can the social body develop soundly, in ISKCON or anywhere. In the next phase of Prabhupada's Varnashram application, Srila Prabhupada appears to contradict himself. So, 66 through 73, that was more or less the tune Prabhupada was singing. Forget Varnashram. And then, a couple of things happened. In the world, there was this first so-called oil crisis. Remember that? In the 70s?
72.
The supply of oil was artificially restricted, by the Saudis. And so there were long gas lines in America. People were shooting each other over gas. And that's when Prabhupada really started to talk about how this motor car civilization will not last. This is completely artificial. And then he would talk about when Hiranyaksha took all that gold out of the earth, and the earth went out of its orbit, fell into the Garbhadak Sea. And he makes an analogy to how, for over 100 years now, wholesale, the earth has been raped for her vital fluid, the oil. So this can't go on forever. Let's see here. Okay. Yeah, so in 74, in the first big Mayapur festival, where a significant number of devotees came, Prabhupada dropped the Varnashram bomb. Here we go. Yeah. That's the second phase for this few years, 74 to 76. We must establish Varnashram. Humanity is in chaos. There were morning walks in Mayapur and in first Vrindavan and then Mayapur. There's a young Vridayananda group, and Bhagavan, and Nitai, and Hansadudu. And everybody's looking down because Prabhupada's talking about, he's just reversing. He appears to be contradicting himself. And so let's hear Prabhupada's words. I've taken two excerpts, one from Mayapur, two from Vrindavan, on the 12th and the 14th of March, 74. I just spliced them together because the second part complements the first part, but it's the same message. Okay, here we are.
The Varnashram college has to be established immediately, everywhere. Wherever we have got our center, a Varnashram college should be established to train 4 divisions. Because if the people are in chaos, how they will be able to accept the great level? It requires school brain.
So we've caught on to how to distribute books. That en masse, it started in San Francisco with Jayananda and Keshava and the brahmacharis, and then up in Vancouver, Mahatma tells right around that same time, he and some devotees who started to distribute big books. Before it was just passing out BTGs, which was nice. That's what we did in Boston in the summer of '70. It was all BTGs. And Giriraj, now Maharaj, he had a stack of BTGs in one arm and a big conch shell for collecting. People would throw in money in the conch. And sometimes he'd come back with $30, and 30 magazines distributed. And we said, wow, how did you do that? So that was going on. And then, gradually books started getting distributed. And around Christmas time, 1972 in LA, as Ramaswara, he used to be Maharaj, tells the story. He was a brahmachari then too. They all went out and they just They went out all night, practically, and they distributed so many books, and they told Prabhupada, Prabhupada was so pleased. So, the wave of book distribution was coming in. Prabhupada was so pleased, we finally caught on to how to distribute his books. And we're going out, and we're in the people's faces in the parking lots, and then in the airports, and then there's pushback, right? From the law. The merchants, it's always the merchants, they were afraid they weren't going to hurt their business. And then the deprogrammers came in, and as I mentioned, for a fat fee, they assured the parents that they'd get their kids back. So Prabhupada becomes aware that, yeah, we're distributing books, but are they reading the books? Do they know what's in these books? Can they understand what's in these books? A lot of Sanskrit books about God, but God is Krishna. Is it Hindu God? What's going on here? So Prabhupada starts talking about how we have to show them how to live. It's like Missouri, is it still the show me state? Right? Don't tell me, show me. So Prabhupada knew that unless and until we show them a better way to live, they won't take the book seriously. And we got to show them something. Just like the Amish, they don't have books or distribute books, they have the Bible. But their example is so powerful. People go to see what they're doing. People are crying for a better way to live in this impersonal, exploitive, materialistic age. So Prabhupada is saying, if you hear the morning walks, if you read the transcripts or you hear the talks, Prabhupada makes it clear that we don't need this. They need it, so therefore we should show them an example of a better way to live. But we're devotees, we're transcendental, right? Because the devotees on the walk, like Vridananda Maharaj and Satsur Maharaj, they're really interested in this. And then they start talking about Varna, and then Prabhupada pulls them back. Now remember, we're devotees. We're not Brahmins, Kshatriyas. They get so much into the role that, they got a little imbalance. So Prabhupada's saying, we're devotees, but we need to show them how to act in a better way, in a harmonious way, a cooperative way, so there's no more exploitation, it's a cooperative way to live. And so you heard Prabhupada say, wherever we have our center, immediately, that's like, what is it now, a 45-year-old standing order that we haven't done? because we're afraid of it. I was telling Jesse, when I was living in Kitanagari for many years, I had Amish friends, and they were always curious about us, because we had this mysterious deity worship, and we were working oxen, but they knew that we were just, the first generation, that there was a time in our young lives when we were in the cities and the suburbs, driving around maybe in sports cars. So Sally Wengard, he said, so let me get this straight, Rich. We started with horses in the 18th century, and we never left them. You guys used to drive around in sports cars, and now you're trying to go to oxen? Whoa! So in his own kind of folksy way, he captured the kind of guna challenge we were up against. They were living in the mode of goodness for hundreds of years. We were addicted to the products of passion and ignorance, and now we're kind of, presto, trying to go to oxen. And so he could see what a challenge it must have been for us. And it was. And that's why the way we were doing it wasn't sustainable. But that's another seminar. Okay. So Prabhupada's saying, yeah, we have a temple, and you get basic training, you get your Brahminical culture, and then the Varnashram colleges should be where you start focusing on your real calling, right? Your real... And you're going to see this in the next lesson. It's called Finding Our Mission in the Mission. What you should be doing for the long haul, based on your guna and karma. Okay, so that's the second phase, and it's only a couple of years when Prabhupada was pushing that with the mood of it's for them. Now, by 1977, Prabhupada is saying, you guys need it. You're not making it. Even my trusted leaders, they're leaving, they're falling down, they can't chant 16 rounds. So let's hear about, no, this is 77, February 14th, it's Valentine's Day. Hare Krishna Dasi and I call this Prabhupada's Varnashram Valentine, to ISKCON in the world. So if you go to the database, there's a few conversations, at least two. So you go to the one that's labeled Varnashram must be implemented. And this is where Prabhupada is speaking with Harishari, Prabhu, and Suresvara Maharaj. And the recording it's not so good because Prabhupada's weak. It's February 77, and he's not feeling well. He had to stop going and giving class, as you may know. So, and this picture is from New Vrindavan, I think it's 74. Prabhupada came in Vrindavan 69, 72, 74, and 76. I think that's his 74 visit. So let's hear Prabhupada, if you can make it out, you can read it anyway, talking about how we need Varnashram in ISKCON.
Varnashram Dharma should be established to become a Vaishnava. It is not so easy to become Vaishnava. To become Vaishnava is so easy, like any point. It's not easy.
So this also is rather revolutionary for Harishari and Suresvara Maharaj to hear. One of them says, but Prabhupada, you were pushing this back, a few years ago in Rome. You hear all these Varnashram walks and talks about how the world as it is not going to last, no more. What will you do when the city's closed, Prabhupada was saying. We're preaching in the cities, but what will you do in the city? And they're going, cities closed? Right? So the Prabhupada said, yeah, the time wasn't really right then, because it was all we could do to keep up with Prabhupada's order to double it, book distribution. That's mainly what we did. And there were, of course, New Talavana was started, Gita Nagari was started, New Vrindavan was there. But really the emphasis was on book distribution. And then finally, as Prabhupada could sense that his manifest Leela was winding up, he was very concerned about how ISKCON would go on, and also very concerned that what he started would continue, would be sustainable, and Varnashram was the main way to do that. Varnashram meaning devotees really focusing on their... I'm going to say this in a minute, I'll just leave that. Okay, so then, who was it? Yeah, Harishari says, but Prabhupada, I thought you always said chanting will replace Varnashram. Chanting will go on. Chanting will go on. That is not stopped. But at the same time, the Varnashram Dharma must be established to make the way easy. And then they said, but Mahaprabhu, he told Ramananda Roy, you have to go beyond Varnashram. This is external. And the Prabhupada says, yeah, Mahaprabhu said that. Eho Bhaikya, this is external, Ramananda. So you're chanting like Mahaprabhu in Mahabhav? He wanted to go all the way to Radha and Krishna, that. But you people, you can't even chant 16 rounds. You're very, you need some help here. And so our program is different than Mahaprabhu's. And then they're like, different than Mahaprabhu's? So what different means, he's extending Mahaprabhu's mercy down further to people who need some remedial help, some Varnashram training. That's why he's talking about Varnashram College. Although Mahaprabhu dismissed Varnashram as external to life's goal, Prabhupada embraced it to further extend the Lord's mercy, so that everyone could get aboard the path back home, back to Godhead. As long as everyone is coming closer to Krishna, extending mercy downward doesn't compromise the goal upward. Pure devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As the next two slides show, Varnashram is not only a must for us to become devotees, it is a must for us to bring the world back to Krishna. Okay, so this is from TKG's diary, and there's Prabhupada at Gita Nagari. So I can have you have your photos, I haven't seen. So Prabhupada also walked, there's Harishari, with the tape recorder, and TKG. Who else is that? Chakrai, right there. And here's Paramananda in his Sunday best, right? He's the best. He's in his overalls. Adi Keshava, Adipati, Kamra, yeah. Krishna Krishna's in there too. Oh, Bali Marna. So, Prabhupada, he came to Gitanagari on July 15th, 1976, just like Prabhupada was here for a day, didn't even stay overnight, right?
Right.
Prabhupada did stay overnight in Gitanagari, he came in the afternoon on the Radha Damodar bus, because at that point, Gitanagari was the New York farm, New Varshana, it was called. People from New Vrindavan who were disappointed by the way New Vrindavan was going, because nobody would stay in the winter, like me. I'd always run away in the winter from New Vrindavan. So K. Swami dubbed me Suresvara. So long, Suresvara. We'll see you next summer. So Paramananda and Satyabhama and Adipati and Prachi Devi and Devaki Nandan, maybe a couple of Yadunandan and Taruni, they left New Vrindavan because New York wanted to get a farm and they wanted to stay with simple living. So they became the first, the pioneers at Gitanagari. And so Prabhupada, he came and he gave an address in the evening on July 15th. Prabhupada said, and it's not just about farms, it's about town and country both. Quote, so this Krishna consciousness movement is trying to revive village organization, as you are trying here. Krishna in his natural life is a village boy in Vrindavan. To be sure, it's land and cow based, but there's all kinds of occupations in the village too. But it does not mean that we shall avoid city life or town life. No, every place is Krishna's place. Everywhere there should be Krishna consciousness. And then he was really pleased that devotees were working so many bulls. Paramananda at that point was working the bulls personally until he hurt his back really badly. And so Prabhupada said, so keep working these bulls. Because if you don't work them, the day will come when you will want to eat them. Because utility is the principle. So oxen, bulls trained as oxen, then they can really help you. They're worth more alive than dead. But you have to be in a more sattvic lifestyle and goal of life to appreciate that. Otherwise, they're just things to be exploited. We used to, we had a herd of brown Swiss cows, so we used to subscribe, for the upkeep of the cows, we subscribed to a Wisconsin-based magazine called Hordes Dairymen. It's the Brown Swiss mag. It used to be, I don't know if it still is. I think it still is, actually. And I read one article in one issue, and it was all about how you can't be sentimental about your cows.
You can't what?
Sentimental. You can't, you have to see them as economic units. Because the way they make it financially, as soon as their production slips, they send them to the slaughterhouse. So you can't get it attached to old Bessie or old Molly or whatever you call the cow. You've just got to see them as economic unit. It was so demonic. It was so, as Prabhupada said, soul-killing civilization. So, let's look at, let's see here. In the lesson's final slides, we confront the components of Prabhupada's Varnashram challenge and what we must do. Okay, before that, I have to put on the screen these quotes. So this is, okay, Prabhupada's here in 76, July. This is like August 77. Yeah, when Prabhupada's really winding up his Leela, and he made that remark about one lamentation, I have not shown you how to live in Varnashram. So this is a letter that Tamal Krishna Maharaj wrote to Harish Shauri about what Prabhupada's saying, like little excerpt, little bits of what Prabhupada's saying, how Krishna consciousness is going to spread all over the world. And it's all about Varnashram. So, who would like to read?
This is the next aspect of Krishna consciousness, which I wish to push forward. On these farms, we can demonstrate the full Varnashram system. If these farms become successful, then the whole world will be enveloped by Krishna consciousness. In the cities, we are interested for preaching, but we cannot present the ideal varnashram system. This is only possible at the farms, so they are very important.
I mean, so prophetic, because today one of the big doors to Krishna consciousness, if we take advantage of it, is the eco door. So we rebrand ourselves as eco-villages sometimes, or at least like a little section of a place is an eco-village. Yeah, the whole world wants a better way to live. They're getting squeezed, they're getting exploited. The leaders of the world, the new guy that just came in Brazil is another exploiter, and the guy in Hungary, and what to speak of, Putin and number 45 in our Oval Office. Okay, rolling back all the environmental regs of the previous administration. So, let's look at, in the lesson's final slides, we confront the components of Srila Prabhupada's Varnashram challenge and what we must do to meet it. Okay. There's Prabhupada, very much the military field commander, there with his cane. And this comes from Bhakti Raghava Maharaj, so you'll probably recognize it, because he's always preaching on these talking points and showing things too by his own example. Okay. Alright, so who would like to read Devala?
The Varnashram phase of Srila Prabhupada's movement differs from the three previous phases in that it directly involves the Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra elements of society, whereas the first three were mainly centered on Brahminical concerns and activities, which may explain why we have been having difficulty implementing it.
Yeah, it's that first phase of the movement, 66 to 73, where Prabhupada's really just trying to put a head back on society by taking, dropouts from, we dropped out of the hippies, dropped out, and then we dropped out of the hippies, a lot of us. So he's taken the dregs of society, or the seekers too, there's different ways to look at it. And he's trying to put a head back in society, and it works more or less, but still, even amongst aspiring devotees, in any population group, you're going to get, at most, maybe 5% will be really Brahminically inclined, priests and teachers, and then Kshatriyas, soldiers, statesmen, administrators, Vaishyas, farmers, businessmen, like that. And Shudras, the assistants. Very few people will actually be able to, stick as a varna, as an occupational duty. Patan patan yajam yajam dana pratigraha, giving in charity, accepting charity, teaching how to worship the deity, learning how to worship the deity. What's the other one? Study the scriptures, teach the scriptures. That's, not many people will do that. And that's okay. So we need all the varnas in all the ashrams developed, and that's what you learn in the Varnashram college. So Prabhupada's trying to, fill out the Hare Krishna movement, organize it more according to a sustainable model. So, now, having said that, right in the Bhagavad Gita, which Prabhupada wrote in the 60s, he was writing it even while he was teaching it using Dr. Radhakrishna's Mayavadi Gita. Because Prabhupada would say, the verses are mostly okay, 90% of them, but the purports are all rubbish, right? Radhakrishna's Gita. So Prabhupada, in the meantime, he was translating the Gita so we could have the whole thing as it is. And right in the Gita, in chapter 12, Devotional Service, text 10, we have, it's the verse where Prabhupada says, if you're unable to practice the rules and regulations of Bhakti Yoga, then just try to work for me, right? And that's going to be most people. Most people aren't going to be ready to take Brahminical vows and, follow the full rules and all that, but they'll want to help. And Prabhupada says that in the purport to 12.10. Quote, there are many devotees who are engaged in the propagation of Krishna consciousness, and they require help. So even if one cannot directly practice the regulative principles of Bhakti Yoga, Because you had the first verse in the series was, just think of me, right? That's pure devotees. You can always think of Krishna. And then Krishna says, if you can't do that, then follow the regulative principles of bhakti. So Prabhupada's saying, even if they can't practice directly the regulative principles of bhakti yoga, he can try to help such work. Every endeavor requires, Prabhupada got this from his he was a double major in economics and English in his in Scottish Churches College. Every endeavor requires land, capital, organization, and labor. That's where you get Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras. Every endeavor requires land, capital, organization, and labor. This voluntary service to the cause of Krishna consciousness will help one rise to a higher state of love for God, whereupon one becomes perfect. Gita 12:10 purport. So then I say, to take Krishna consciousness to every town and village will require the cooperation of pure devotees, regulative devotees, and what I call non-regulative devotees, who are not strong enough or ready yet, or evolved enough to take vows and do that sadhana, but they want to cooperate, they want to participate. So that's good. And those are the kind of people I was talking to. Who was I talking to yesterday about? Tillers? Oh, Krishna. That's right. Yeah. Tillers is an organization, Tillers International, in, what's the town?
Scotts, Michigan.
Okay, they're in Michigan. And their mission in life is to train people who want to work animals. Because they know that's sustainable, that's God's way. And so you can go there and get pucka trained as an oxman or a horseman or whatever. Yeah. So those are the kind of people. And you said that they love devotees.
They love devotees.
Yeah, because they know, at least it's in our philosophy, to work animals. Right? So those are the kind of people who can be big allies, and we can reach out to, and some of them can become devotees by act, because varnashram is really the missing piece in the whole eco-puzzle. You buy your milk in the store, and oh yeah, the cows were grass-fed, and we take care of them, and then they butcher them. Right? Mm. Even if you buy organic milk, you're still participating in the blood milk industry. But when you have that sweet relation, as Prabhupada said in that last lesson, between man and God and the land and animals, that's Krishna's holistic, complete system. But it's in the mode of goodness. And in this society, it's completely in passion and ignorance, so they don't see the value. You can get so much more plowed in an hour with a tractor than you can with a bull. Right? So Parmananda himself said, when I was plowing with the bulls, I wondered, what did Prabhupada mean? Save time. If you live in the country, you can save time for chanting Hare Krishna. Well, he noticed when he hurt his back that when he went to the tractor, because he had to get the stuff done, there was not a trained oxen at that time in Gitanagari, how hellish it was to be on that tractor, and it was harder for him to think of Krishna. But when he was with the animal, and the bull, like Krishna, with the bull, and calling Ji and Ha, and the animal was what they call broke to the word, just by the tone of the voice of the oxman. The relationship is so good, he doesn't have to hit him with a lash. He's broke to the word. Mm. He just says Ji to turn left and Ha to turn right, and whoa and back up, and because a good teamster knows he knows the limits of the animal. He's considering the time of the day. He encourages, when they do something right, he pats them. When we had ISKCON Farm newsletter, and they were getting it in Lake Huntington, where that school was, with Sri Ram, Lake Sri Ram, and Lakshmi Mali, and Mili Vadika, and others. So they were reading the newsletter, and they said, "This is a great newsletter, and by the way, it's a great way to train children, because the children don't have developed intelligence, so we have to know how to be fair but firm with them." So they use it as kind of a manual. They just transferred it to kids. Yeah. So anyway, where am I? Yeah, we need all the different kinds of levels of people. So let's see, that's the first one. Let's go to the second bullet point. How about Jesse?
One reason we have failed to take up Varnashram has been our fixation on city temples. In order to accommodate the Varnashram mission, we need to make a paradigm shift. In order to accomplish this, education, exposure, and training are a must. For this reason, Srila Prabhupada has urged us to establish Varnashram colleges.
Yeah, Prabhupada had a constellation of entities in his preaching strategy. You have the city temple, right? Because that's where most of the people are. And there is this big kind of vision of the spiritual world. In a lot, like you have it here, because it's so nice deity worship. So they get a vision of it, but then how does it actually, what does it actually look like? You know, what's behind the, like in Hollywood they have facades, right? But what's behind the facade? They have a set, you know, a cowboy town or whatever. So the city temple is where you get the vision, and you get the philosophy, and then Prabhupada said you should have Varnashram college, because then people can learn how to live in Varnashram, and then they can apply it by going to the rural project, and that's where you see the village, you know, working all the different, the Varnas and the ashrams. So that's where you can get a vision of how Krishna lives in the village. Of course, it's still theoretical for us. We haven't developed so much, but the vision is all there, and how to do it is even in Prabhupada's Vani. And then in college towns, Prabhupada, of course, had restaurants and reading rooms. So all these entities are working in tandem to attract people to Krishna consciousness. The students, the people in the city, the Varnashram college where devotees get trained, more it's like beyond the basic training of Bhakti Shastri and other things. They learn how to live in Krishna's Varnashram. But it's such a challenge because we're coming from passion and ignorance. So most of us don't even want to do that. But there are people, as I was saying, like the people at tillers or the small farmers, journal people, organic farmers, who, you know, could be receptive to this kind of thing, living more in the country. So we should be reaching them also. All right, so the city, yeah, so we're still kind of in our hearts, you know, city slickers. I was describing to Jesse how that played out at Gita Nagari. Yeah, we told them, as I mentioned, I think, when we won the prize for having the best herd of brown Swiss cows, how you treat the cow like your mother, and then they treat the bull like your father, and then we didn't tell them about the $1 million painting business that was supporting the hobby. But it actually, it's the better way to live. Also, Pramananda said, so he was on the tractor and it was hellish, but then when he was working the oxen, he was able to remember Krishna, and he was able to chant Hare Krishna. Easier, because it's the way Krishna lives. This is how God lives when he's at home. Yes, he has Dwarka, and yes, he can be a warrior, Kurukshetra, he can drive the chariot of Arjuna. But when he's home, this is what he likes to do. But we think it's backwards. So we got a problem. Okay, let's do another bullet point.
Class society can only exist when all individuals identify themselves as servants of Krishna while accepting roles within Varnashram, as in a drama or play.
This is Bhakti Raghava Swami's phrase, as in a drama or play. Yeah, these bodies are our costumes. But we're all equal spiritually, but according to the costume, we still have a role to play in the society, well, as long as we're on earth. So how do I put this? Note that since devotees identify themselves as Krishna's servants, Srila Prabhupada's Varnashram is Daiva, it's transcendental. While playing Varnashram roles, we use the body to transcend the bodily concept of life and go back to Godhead. Okay, so lesson outcomes. By the end of the lesson, students will be able to identify the 4 ways in which Prabhupada used the term varnashram. Let's see if we can recall. What was the first varnashram? Vedic. Once upon a time. Then with Katowski, dormant, potential, sleeping, latent. Then the third was materialistic. You have the people claiming position by birth, or people just being karma kandis, ritualistic. And then Daiva. The varnashram actually graduates us from this world of birth and death. It's like a bridge. So on the bridge, you keep moving. You don't camp out on the bridge. So in the beginning of the bridge, we're acting kind of like in karma yoga. We tend to be very fruitive, attached to the work and attached to the fruits of the work. But as we practice sadhana, as we go across the bridge and we hear about Krishna, chant Hare Krishna, then we start falling in love with Krishna. And we become detached from the body and its work and the fruits of the work. So that's called Nishkam yoga, Nishkam karma yoga. Beginning in Sakam, we're full of material desire, right? Sakam to Nishkam. And then finally on the other side of the bridge it's Shuddha, it's pure bhakti. And as Prabhupada writes in Gita purport, in that stage you can do anything for Krishna. You're not attached to the work or its fruits. It's like Prabhupada, he was displaying all the varnas. He was doing everything when he came over, right? He was the teacher, he was cleaning up, he taught the devotees how to do accounts, like Vaishya. He was the military field commander, he was like a Kshatriya. You can act in any way. So how that plays out in our lives personally, it's up to Krishna. He knows our nature. When Arjuna heard the Bhagavad Gita and surrendered, he didn't stop being a Kshatriya, but he changed the account. He changed the consciousness. He agreed to fight, even though he still had to fight Bhishma and Drona, his friends and family. He was being asked by God to kill his friends and family. And when he understood that Krishna wanted it, and therefore it was good for everybody, he did it. And that's why Krishna said, let's see, early in the 18th chapter, before Krishna said surrender, in text 17, Krishna said, one who is not motivated by false ego, whose intelligence is not entangled, though he kills men in this world. That was the main thing. Arjuna didn't want to fight because he thought it was sinful. Does not kill. Though he kills men in this world, does not kill, nor is he bound by his actions. So radical situation. In Miami, Prabhupada was chanting japa, and Srila Kirti was serving him. They were staying at Abiram's house. And then I walked over after lunch to the back door, and I said, Shruta, anything I can do? Because I knew Prabhupada was right there behind the curtain. He said, yeah, you can wash the floor, wash the counters. Prabhupada just finished lunch. And then all of a sudden, Prabhupada called for Srila Kirti. Shruta Kirti. Srila Kirti went behind the curtain. And there was Prabhupada. He was chanting japa after lunch. And he was looking at a picture of Krishna and Arjuna, where Arjuna is saying, I shall not fight. That. So, all Prabhupada said was, very difficult job. Very difficult. He said, Krishna told Arjuna, kill your relatives. Kill your relatives. But he did it. He killed his relatives. That is Krishna Bhajan. Kill your relatives. Yeah. Now why he said that's another story. Yeah. Well, Srila Kirti had just rejoined his party after Prabhupada insisted he leave his wife and child in Hawaii and rejoin him. And Prabhupada, that was his way of validating Srila Kirti's surrender to come with Prabhupada again. It was the second stint as being Prabhupada's servant. And Prabhupada would never do that, have somebody leave his wife and child. But in that particular situation, it was actually favorable for everybody concerned. So that's another story. Lesson outcomes. By the end of the lesson, students will be able to identify the 4 ways in which Prabhupada used the term Varnashram, describe how Prabhupada applied Varnashram to ISKCON differently over time. Forget it. We need to do this in the next phase for their sake. You need it. You're not making it. Identify the components of Prabhupada's Varnashram challenge, as well as what we must do to meet it. Unless you're living, with the land and the cows, it's very hard for the modern mind to wrap its head, around the whole notion of living the way Krishna lives. Yeah, it seems backwards. It seems impractical. That's because of passion and ignorance. Can't understand. Okay, and then tomorrow morning, a nice kind of balance to that Varnashram lesson is finding our mission in his mission. There's Prabhupada again at the manor, and Bhagavad Prabhu has caught Prabhupada in a very meditative mood. Okay, I'm going to sit down. Oops. Any questions? Oh, Krishna Shrai.
Bhakti Maharaj was here a few months ago doing his research for his PhD.
What's his PhD on?
Is it sociology or?
I can't remember.
Yeah, it's a sociology-related thing.
His thesis is a sociological study of ISKCON, specifically the forms and also Indian villages.
Okay.
And how it, what's going on with it all.
Okay.
And in discussing with him, and also some past videos I watched from him, well, first of all, our interest is Varnashram, Dhama, and Varnashram colleges. That's one reason why we came here, really. And I was in contact with him 14 years ago when he first had his first Varnashram college for adults.
Where?
In Kerala.
Okay.
Kerala. And that was his inaugurational class, his first class. Couldn't make it. But we found out that Varnashram College, actually there are 2 of them. And there's a Varnashram College for children, the Gurukul, and then there's a Varnashram College for adults.
Is that what he said?
Yes.
Okay.
And we thought, oh, Varnashram College is college, we're thinking college level. The Westerner thinks college age, college level. But watching a video of a child, I think he was in Gurukul, 10 years old, he said, here I am in Varnashram College now. I'm thinking like, wow, that's it. And they actually observe the child, or the devotee kid, and then guide them into their varna. Like that little kid he's standing up for the other kids. He's showing Kshatriya qualities. This little kid, he's organizing the teams, and he's doing this and that. He's managing. And then there's a kid that's reading and maybe preaching to the other kids. So they watch the child and sort of guide them naturally into their varna. But as adults, we need to catch up, especially as Westerners, because we don't even understand the system. If you talk to someone, in fact, I think we were discussing with some devotees in Atlanta about Varnashram, and there was a devotee that was in the first stage. That's all he knew about it. He said, Prabhupada said, we don't need this. He did not know about the success.
Long after that stage.
Yeah.
What stage?
He did not know he didn't know the 3 stages.
Oh, you mean the phases of...
Phases.
Yeah. That's why that's so
And
confusing.
there's some devotees that are in that first stage. They said, Prabhupada, that's all they know. And it's accurate. Prabhupada said, we don't need that. And so we have to
You have to
sort
see
of
the
catch up.
evolution. You have to see the evolution of Prabhupada's preaching, and it's an evolution of extending himself more and more mercy. Because most people aren't Brahminical, including me. I'm recovering,
Bhakti Raghava said, any Brahmana can come up with a study plan and just get the college started. So we can have a Varnashram college here for adults, and when we have children, if or when the Gurukul starts again, then it can be applied for the children's age. That's what we
Did
just
Bhakti Raghava Swami back up his two kinds of, one for kids, one for adults, with any reference to Prabhupada?
I don't recall that.
No, but he was saying that as we are now, we need to have, because he said, Prabhupada said you should have Varnashram colleges at every place. And I think it's really for, is it for children only?
He said it was Varnashram talks age 12.
Yes, if you look at Prabhupada's, because they asked him that, about Gurukul and how does that relate to Varnashram. It's like everybody gets the same general education, but then when puberty starts coming on, and their tendencies start manifesting more about what they're really interested in, that's when you bring in the Varnashram college. So 12, 13. Otherwise, everybody's learning, reading and writing, arithmetic.
So that would be true for Varnashram college. And basically for us adults, we need seminars. In fact, he calls it this way. He has an app that's incredible. Sarabi.
Yeah.
I think it's called the Sarabi app.
Yeah.
And he has Varnashram research teams, and I've joined that group. And so every center can have Varnashram research teams where the adults sort of catch up, because we're in a catch-up game.
Yeah, like they have remedial courses.
Exactly.
For people, they get socially promoted all the way to maybe even college, and then they test them, and they can hardly read or write, and they're supposed to be in college. Just because they're good at football, so they got a football scholarship, but they can hardly read and write. So yeah, similarly, maybe we're first initiated, second initiated, maybe we've taken sannyas, maybe we're gurus. So do we really know, through and through Krishna's culture? No, that's what Varnashram is really all about. So we need remedial help.
So hopefully next time you come, we'll have a national college.
Is he going to come again? Did he say he'd come?
I think he might come back. But next time you come back, we hope.
Well, I'm a one-trick pony. This is it, folks. I do Varnashram, I do Prabhupada Acharya series, and then that's it. That's all I know. Kaivalya had her hand up.
Yeah, I mean, this is just to throw it out there, but I don't expect an answer, but if you can. Just, walking around Mayapur, for example, you'll see many of the villagers, they have their little cows tied up, a few of them, maybe 3 or 4 maximum. But then you start wondering, and you don't see any old cows out there in the field, and you just start wondering like, oh gosh, for these poor villagers, they probably don't have a way of maintaining, or funds, or, space to maintain all the cows, because after 2 years, then what? The milk dries up, you either, and
You're not talking about our cow, you're talking about the villagers around Mayapur, right?
Yeah, but they could be, so I'm just saying, I just, in my mind, unless you're like a rich person, wealthy, with a lot of land, I don't see how it's practical to, they recommend having each householder having a cow, for example.
Yeah.
At some point, I think people that have tried it, they kind of get frustrated because they end up with a lot of offspring and a lot of, and then they're only one couple, so then, you could see it for a couple years, but not for the rest of your life. So I just wonder, how does that work, actually? What's the ideal way for say a poor, simple living? How are you going to have milk or, offer milk to Krishna if you can't, first of all, you don't buy it, you don't want it, you're a villager, so you have your own cow. So how does that work?
Well, this is an old discussion, and there is, I forget the numbers, but it's true. I mean, to keep cow and milk, you do have to have so much land, and then the cow lives maybe 20 years. And then so the herd can't be big. But one thing I heard, where was it going on? Some devotees were doing this. It was probably Eastern Europe or someplace where they're not so spoiled as we are. But I think one family was doing it, and then other families weren't keeping cows, as the cows were multiplying, then different families would agree to keep the cow. So there was more families involved, so they could be maintained.
Cow sharing? Cow sharing?
Yeah, like that, cow sharing. So that was very interesting to me, because you're right, unless you're living in a culture where people value cow protection, and you're not, so money oriented, then it doesn't really add up. But so that's one way where the math, the simple math, can add up. But I can't tell you much more because I didn't find out about it. I just heard it was going on. Yeah, cow sharing. And in that way, they were always in milk, those few families, and they were, protecting the cows.
I'd like to go back to your previous topic. From Gurukula, the children would go on to Varnashram College.
That's the theory.
How would apprenticeships fit into that?
That would be part of it.
Yeah, that's definitely it. Yeah. As you'll see in the next lesson, Finding Our Mission in His Mission, you'll see how Varna is determined. And how someone becomes confident that it's actually their Varna. Because, in Kali Yuga, you're going to see in the beginning of the next lesson how we're all Varna Sankara, really. We're all mixed. You'll hear Prabhupada say mixed population. Varna Sankara is identified in the Gita as unwanted population, but another definition is mixed population, where the gunas and the karmas are so mixed up in the consciousness, because the demon and the devotee, for example, are living in the same body. It's hard to know. You're segueing right into the next lesson. It's hard to know who we are. And therefore, people reach a certain age, 40, 50, have a midlife crisis. I'm wasting my life. I don't know who I am anymore. I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. Because of the non-Varnashram culture, people never really bother to discover deep down who they are. They just chase the money, and they regret it. So next lesson, I think we'll get into that a little. But I think, the question.
Yeah. So this lesson is more about occupational duties about varnas. And what
You got to speak a little slower.
This lesson is more about varnas, about your occupational duty. But what about ashram?
Right. Well, the reason I'll tell you before you continue, the reason it's all about varnas is before you can have ashram, you've got to know your varna. And varna is determined. How is varna determined in Bhagavad Gita? Guna and karma. It's all based on the modes of nature. And you need help in identifying really the modes of nature. You'll see in this next lesson. You'll see. We need mentors at every step, ideally right out of the womb. We need good parents. See, we don't even have that necessarily. Good parents, good teachers, good masters. And you'll see it takes a village to raise a sadhaka. That's one of my slides. Unless and until we're really whole and secure and confident in our calling in life, unless we know what we're about, what our contribution is to life, we can't really have a healthy ashram. Like, for example, someone in Shudra Varna, who's definitely an assistant, who's meant to assist a leader in a higher, by class Varna, there's only one ashram for the Shudra, Grihastha. There's no question of that person being a brahmachari, of course in the beginning you get educated, but then you go right to Grihastha and you don't take sannyas, or you have your companion, and that's settled. Anyway, that's next lesson too.
But for example, like Prabhupada was saying that in Kali Yuga, one should not take sannyas. Is it also like one of the stages of his preaching? Or
Well, no, that he's in that context, the context that Prabhupada would say that and write that, that's classic Varnashram. And that's even, where is that from? Lord Chaitanya? There's even a verse like that, right? You can't take sannyas, you can't beget a child and your brother's wife. Sometimes the male is impotent, but the wife wants a child. So in Vedic culture, you can actually beget a child in the womb of your brother's wife. But that's forbidden. And what else? Oh, horse sacrifice, right? You can't. The Brahmins aren't there to. Horse.
Any animal sacrifice.
Any animal, yeah. It was Gomeda and Ashvamedha. You can't renew the animal's life. It won't walk into the sacrificial fire and walk out with a new body. It'll be just a Holocaust. And just be incinerated. So there's 5 things, right? There's 5 things. Oh, so that's a good example.
Sorry? Could you say the sannyas we have now is not classical sannyas?
Well, it was revived by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta because the senior Gaudiya Vaishnavas, they just became Babbas.
For preaching.
Babaji, for preaching, because people still respect that order of life. So the Mayavadis have it. In fact, you can't even be an authentic follower of Shankara unless you just renunciate. But in Gaudiya culture, Gaudiya Vaishnava culture, any order of life, you can be a preacher, teacher, you can be a good devotee. So now, you can take
What is the name of that article that you wrote about slaughter and war, and when did you publish it and where?
Okay. It's called You Can Talk of Peace Until the Cows Come Home. And there's a picture, usually the pictures of me before the article were a smiley face, with hair and overalls. But on this picture I had Yamaraj, the late great Yamaraj Prabhu, take a picture of me with a very grave look on the face. It wasn't a smiley face. It was like very concerned. So that's the that's the face. And so You Can Talk of Peace Till the Cows Come Home. That is February, I believe it's February 1984. BTG.
And you can just Google it and
you can just go in the database. Yeah, and just go into BTG.
Okay.
Yeah, of course it's not as good because you don't have pictures.
I found it with pictures.
Oh,
just now.
You see me with a
with a serious look on your
serious
face.
look.
Still wearing overalls, but
still wearing overalls. Same overalls.
Yeah.
I still have them now. Checkered shirt, tilak hair, because I was also selling paintings. And that's actually. Oh, wait a minute. No, wait a minute. Was it no, it wasn't February '84. That was my favorite one.
It was December 1983.
December '83.
December '83.
Okay, because February '84 was A Splinter's Tale with the picture with Vaishnava and the drama.
So that wasn't your favorite one?
Anybody else?
No, actually, it wasn't my favorite in terms of the writing experience, and the drama. The drama was that A Splinter's Tale, taking wood out of the snow with oxen. But this was the most effective piece. People would tell me, when my mother read that piece, she gave up meat on the spot. Because I took them on the tour. That's what I did. I took the reader on the tour. And that's why I took the tour, because I knew I had to do that. And I had to make that connection between slaughtering cows and getting slaughtered in wars. Yeah.
I had a couple of more. Is that all right?
9:12. It's up to y'all.
Okay.
Or you can save it for Monday the 20th. Unless it's quick.
Let's see if it's quick. One's kind of a comment, but Hinduism, as we know it, is a sort of materialistic varnashram.
Right.
Doesn't mean that some Brahmin is just going to be a fat sense enjoyer, maybe a real mode of goodness person, but
that's true.
They're very karma kanda oriented.
Yes. Yes, that's a very good point. That's Hinduism is all about karmakanda, going to heaven and worshipping the gods and going to Svarga. Yeah.
And last but not least, maybe Monday if it requires more time to comment upon, but in communism, in Russian communism, maybe it was just a sort of public relations thing to say it's a classless society. Because that doesn't really describe it, because it's not.
That's what the
It's
devotees
mainly
told
a
me.
state-controlled society, fully
Yeah.
state-controlled society.
That's what the devotees told me, that no one actually believed that, Marxism and Leninism were going to have a classless utopia. It's not it at all. They just, the Bolsheviks came in 1917, and the people were so burned by the Tsar and his family that they were ripe for some change. And then they became the new tyrants.
The party just replaced the Tsar.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Because unless it's God-centered, then it's just going to be another brand of exploitation. And then, Stalin came in, killing so many people. And, So the devotee told me nobody really believed it. They had to play along because they had the guns. Right? And everybody was ratting on everybody else. Everybody at KGB was everywhere. If you were saying something, it's like today in China still. It's kind of like that. Even though they've opened up economically.
If you toe the line, you're all right.
Yeah, that's what Tamal Krishna Maharaj was in Gitanagari in the mid-80s. He was telling about his underground China preaching. And he thought they were really underground, but then one day he was approached by some Chinese communist official and said, "We know who you are, and we know what you're doing." And he proved it by telling them where they'd been, what programs they were doing, and where they were going next. Because they have people come to these programs. And we don't really care.
I never heard that. That's what he said, we don't really care.
We don't really care, but then he said, but don't get big.
Wow.
If you get big, and you saw what happened. That was in '85, at Gitanagari, he told us. And then 4 years later was Tiananmen Square. When the student movement started to get big, and then they started mowing down their own people. And we did too. Kent State.
Yeah, it happened.
The counter, they felt very threatened, Nixon and Hoover, by the protest because of Vietnam. And so that was... Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts, absolutely. So it doesn't matter what, as Prabhupada said, it doesn't matter what the form of government is, as long as it's Krishna conscious. You can have Bhagavat communism, as he said, you can have in America.
Didn't he also say, along with that quote, it doesn't matter what the form of government is, so long as the leaders are good?
Yeah, the leaders, they have to be Krishna conscious. Yeah. Communism, capitalism, and then everything gets purified when the leader is Krishna conscious. Okay.
This could be, I'll maybe this will be shit tomorrow too, but in our farm communities, we may have all levels of people. So how are we going to understand it? Sometimes it seems like Prabhupada says everybody's got to chant in the morning program, and sometimes maybe they aren't going to, but we need their expertise and they can be part of the community as Vaishyas and Shudras.
That's right. That's right. That's why in that conversation in the Varnashram Valentine, they're saying, because Prabhupada's saying, he was really startling, Satsarup Maharaj and Harishari. He's saying in the conversation that because Prabhupada's saying, we have to let people be who they are. And so then Harishari says, well, Srila Prabhupada, people come into ISKCON, and then after 6 months a year, they get initiated. And then after 6 months a year again, then they take Brahman initiation. And so Prabhupada said, why? There's no need. Let them remain Shudra, and they can attain the supreme perfection. Now what he meant by that was there would be Shudra Vaishnavas, not just low-class people, by practicing sadhana according to their situation. Just like I mentioned, in the morning, in the summer, the oxman has to go out and sacrifice the Brahma Muhurta to do his prescribed duty. But Prabhupada actually was saying there's no need even for them to take second initiation. if they're rightly situated in their varna, there's no need for that. So
He actually said that in my second initiation letter. He wrote back for the second initiation letter. He said, I accept Yogendra Vandana as my second initiated disciple who's been first initiated for about 3 or 4 years. He says, but there's no need for everyone to take second initiation.
Yeah.
There are 4 classes of men. And he said, especially for brides, I don't want to, at that time, this is what he said at that time, he said, especially if they can't attend Mangalati, what is the need to take Brahminical initiation?
Yeah, but he wanted them to participate. He wanted them to be who they were. You'll see, next lesson is really strong on this, both by the books and by the spoken word lectures. Prabhupada is talking about this. And you'll notice also this is toward the end of his Leela. He's not talking like this in 68 or 70, but he's talking like this more and more as he approaches the end of his Leela. Because he knows that's how ISKCON is going to be sustainable. When these different levels of devotees, pure devotees, sadhakas, regulative devotees, and non-regulative devotees, I call them, they're all working together. And they all appreciate each other, and they need each other.
And you can also see that in a large degree in Hinduism. Because, Varnashram, or the caste system, is such a major part of the religion, so to speak,
Yeah, by birth, but still.
Well, it may be a perverted reflection, but you can very clearly see it.
Yeah, there's some remnant, as Prabhupada said. India is like a dead elephant.
I mean, even their surnames, refer to what they do. Sharmas are Brahmins, Patels are Vaishyas.
Well, that's true in America too.
Yeah.
Smith. We're gonna. Okay, Gokul hasn't asked.
This is just sort of a comment or an observation that I've noticed even with some communities that I was involved with, and I won't mention the area of the country, but when there's certain successful Indians, like who are doctors and engineers and so on, the leaders that come, the gurus, the GBCs, the sannyasis that come, they're coming there primarily to, glorify the Indian culture, but they never encourage any support for these rural farm communities. They like the fact that they're living in suburbia, and these people themselves.
Oh, the sannyasis don't encourage it?
Yeah. Because that they're like, to me, it's, I don't want to be offensive, but it's like they're ATM machines.
That's another seminar. But yeah, the GBC knows that, and there's been resolutions about that.
And actually, the doctors, the Indians themselves will tell me, you can't expect us to go back to the village. That's primitive. I've actually heard this more than once.
Yes, well, you'll see that in the next lesson. At the very end, how finding our mission in the mission doesn't mean we all run away to the woods. Especially when you're older, there's no question of that. Right? The die is cast. But everybody does have a place in Prabhupada's movement. We end up with a famous purport from the first canto about that. And Prabhupada's encouraging everybody to be all they can be for Krishna. It's for the town and the country. But we really do need to develop this eco farm thing. That's the face we put on it now, right? To make it attractive. Mm-hmm. You don't have to call it Varnashram. What's that? People just call it eco village, and then we learn our place in that village, if that's what we want to do. I'll tell you, when I joined ISKCON, I joined in Boston, then I went to Pittsburgh, but it wasn't until I got to the land and the cows at New Vrindavan, that was my first real alma mater, that I feel real. That I feel like I was with real people and doing real work. I mean, maybe that's not, yeah, I just felt better, and especially Gitanagari. Boy, that's where I really kind of grew up, got married and had a child. And that's the way Krishna lives. It's his place. God made the country, man made the city, the devil made the small town. So, but people are in the city, so that's why Siddhanta Saraswati wanted all his followers to be in the city. But then ultimately to get them out of the city, to start reversing that artificial whole thing that happened, with the Industrial Revolution. We can use it, but ultimately we're using it to get people away from passion movements, to get them into Sattva, to live as Krishna lives. We're going to give the last word too, Prabhu.
Yeah, a comment maybe that you can also comment upon. I'm just, from what you were just saying, it made me think that, finding our mission within the mission, for a lot of us, just regular people growing up in America, everybody learns that you have to put bread and butter on the table. So for a lot of us, the mission within the mission was financing Prabhupada's movement, We had to go out and somehow we had to, pay for it all.
Right. Yeah, that's part of the mission. But that's for a certain kind of person.
The next step is to grow our own wheat to make our own bread.
Yeah.
And make our own butter from the cows we milk.
And we used to do that in, gee whiz, I don't know, what was it, 1976, 77, 78, all up and in. For breakfast, we would use the cracked wheat that we grew. Yeah. We would put some butter in it from the cows. We would boil it in, skim milk or whole milk, whatever, you wanted to use. And then we'd sweeten it with cane syrup that we grew. And that's what we did for breakfast.
Sounds good. Wow. We just have to make it sustainable.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for listening. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.